2,000 different opinions about the origin of the universe. That would mean that there are certain, that wouldn't mean there are 2,000, I wouldn't think that would mean 2,000 distinctly different opinions, but there may be various strains, 2,000 strains of opinions with maybe a few principal theories with different versions of them. So there, among astrophysicists, there are 2,000 different opinions of the origin of the universe. Of course, there are also theories that there is no origin of the universe. It's just there, forever. Just always been there and always will. Now, if we consider there are 2,000 astrophysical opinions, well, there probably aren't more than 2,000 astrophysicists in the whole world anyway. What do you think about that? I mean, how many astrophysicists are there? Not that many, are there? So it seems that they don't have a very solidified or unified opinion on this. It seems that they all have different opinions. However, it would be difficult to find any astrophysicist who would even begin to recognize that any of the Bhagavatam model of the universe is correct. I mean, they may have distinctly different opinions among themselves, but just like in the Bhagavatam, we find that there are 4 elephants who hold up the different directions of the universe, and the whole universe is held on the hoods of Anantanag. And there are other snakes also who hold up the earth. Ananta is one, and there are others also. There are 7 snakes. Maybe they're helping Ananta. So this kind of thing, this is branded as mythology. It's not can't be considered to be correct. It's considered the universal order is held in place by different physical energies, specifically gravity. But the idea that there's a snake, the whole universe is sitting on a snake's hood, doesn't tally with anything that anyone. I mean, no one ever looked in not microscope or horoscope, but in a telescope, and saw a snake. Of course, if there was a snake holding up the universe, you wouldn't see it anyway. Just like when an ant crawls on your body, he doesn't see your body. It's too big for him to realize. For him, it's just something else. He's crawling. It's too big for him to understand that he's crawling on a human body. So that is one factor, that anything which is very big, it's very difficult for us to see or to say anything about. Previously, people in the Western countries had the idea that the Earth planet is flat, and if you sail far enough, you'll sail off the edge, because the Earth was so big, they weren't able to understand what it was like. So they concluded that, well, there must be an end somewhere, and wherever we saw the Earth, it's flat. So presumably, if you take your sailing ship far enough west of Europe, then at some point you're going to just go over the edge. What's over the edge? They don't know. So there are various theories due to their inability to see. Now our ability to see has been enhanced by modern inventions, telescopes, and by astronomical calculations. Still, they don't seem to be like anything described in the Bhagavatam. How to resolve this? Well, the main devotee in our movement who has started to make some work on resolving this, although it's not a very small job, is Sadaputta Prabhu. He has suggested that the descriptions in the Bhagavatam do not necessarily contradict those of what is observed by modern science, but that the descriptions of the Bhagavatam, they also describe phenomena that can't be seen from our present angle of vision. There are many things which we can't see. Just like if it said that the or that some Sputnik was sent into space and took photos of different planets. Now in the Bhagavatam, the description is of life on those planets, demigods living on those planets, but they're not seen. So how is that? Well, it may be that you can't see them. You don't have the ability to see. Not everyone can see everything. That's commonly observed that on this planet, not very commonly, it's quite uncommon, but there is a repeated phenomena of beings from other dimensions manifesting themselves to people on this planet, and some people can see them and some can't. Just like when Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was sitting in one dharamshala in Navadip, and he was sitting on the roof on a hot summer's evening, and he saw a great light emanating from a place on the other side of the river, which we now know to be the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he asked, his one son was with him, Kamala Prasad. He asked him, do you see that light? And Kamala said, yes. And he asked another man who was with him, do you see? He said, no. He could see, others couldn't see. So this is fairly common that what to speak of other living beings, just like this aura. Everyone has an aura. You know what was meant by that, aura? Around everybody there's a band of light which shows different colors, and it tells so many things about your health, about your mood, about your character even. So many things can be seen from that. Some people can see that, most people can't. I believe there's some kind of technology, there's some kind of photography that's been invented that can show this. Is it infrared? Shows the aura? Is it? Anyway, the point I'm making here is that some people can see it and others can't. Now some people may reject that, well, we can't see it, so it doesn't exist. That's not very intelligent. Just because you can't see it. The whole of modern empiric science, the whole stance is to reject that which we can't understand. That's why astrology also is generally rejected. Just to give another example. Astrology is a complex science. It rests on astronomy. Without knowledge of astronomy, there's no question of the science of astrology. So it's a very complex science which has been practiced for many years. It requires a tremendous amount of knowledge and intelligence to even begin to understand how this works. But empiricists, or those who profess the empiric method, they tend to dismiss this as nonsense. Of course, a lot of what is practiced nowadays is nonsense, especially when you look in the cheap newspapers in the Western countries and you see the daily horoscope by your daily stars by someone who is not at all an expert. So that's not very scientific. But there are people who are very deeply trained in this science. It's not that, as Prabhupada wrote, it's a great science, and misuse of a great science doesn't render it invalid. So, how to understand these Bhagavatam descriptions? That we have to understand. We're talking about things which we may not be able to see, even with the best of telescopes, because we're not meant to see it. Just like you're not, if there's the king and queen of the country, You're not meant to see their private life. It's not within your domain, it's improper. So they have systems to stop you intruding on that. They have guards. So in the same way, you may not be meant to see living beings on higher planets. They have systems by which you can't see. They're living beings in higher planets. That means they've achieved that position due to punya karma. They've acted very piously. So those who are not pious, then their level of perception is lower. And that we see. That those who are impious, they cannot appreciate transcendence. Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Brahmane Vaishnave Swalpan Punyavatam Rajan Vishvasa Naiva Jayante. Those who have swalpa punya, very little pious activities, Vishvasa Naiva Jayate, their faith in the Mahaprasad of Govinda, in Govinda himself, in the holy name, in the Vaishnavas, it doesn't come about because they have very little piety. A saintly person can be appreciated by other saintly persons, other saintly people. To the common man who is impious, a saintly person, they'll be rude. They'll just treat him like, they'll say, "Oh, that guy, that man." That's why we don't speak of the spiritual master as this man. We don't consider him an ordinary person. But those who are on a very gross level, they see everyone else on their own gross, lowly, mundane level, and they presume when they see the disciples are bowing down before the spiritual master, they presume, oh, you see, he's exploiting them. They don't consider that because in that situation they would exploit, and everyone else they know, they can't see beyond exploitation. They see if someone is submitting themselves to others without any payment, they're not getting anything physical, gross in return, they can't understand that the spiritual master is giving something which is, he's not giving payment. He may give chastisement, but he's giving something. Why the disciples are bowing down? Because they're getting something which is not gross, but they're getting spiritual benefit. But to the non-devotee or to the gross materialist, they cannot perceive. They have no perception of spiritual benefit. They presume that, like themselves, everyone is simply interested in some material benefit. So they presume that the spiritual master has cheated the disciples into some kind of pseudo-spiritual acquiescence to his orders. He's exploiting them in that way by some kind of mind control. These are the theories they come up with. But for the disciples themselves, they are very happy to do that because they're getting something which is imperceptible to the materialists. So we see that even within our own plane of activities, us here now, not going to the different planets, but right here on this planet. Right here, there are many things which are perceptible, perceivable to those of developed consciousness, which are not perceivable at all to those of undeveloped consciousness. So, this description of the different planetary systems, how it is seen, that our Sadaputta Prabhu has proposed, that is seen according to the vision of those who have more developed consciousness. They can see things which we don't see. Prabhupada also, when he was flying in the plane over the Swiss Alps, he commented that these mountains, they go up to the next Varsha. Now, how are you flying over them? If the mountain is going so high, then you should be bumping into it. So, what does that mean? That means that in some sphere of reality, which we don't see but which Prabhupada was seeing. These mountains are extremely high. We have descriptions in the Bhagavatam of mountains more than 1,000,000 miles high. We don't see such mountains, but the descriptions are there. There's a description of Lord Shiva sitting under a banyan tree. 1,000,000 yojana means 8,000,000 miles wide and 8,000,000 miles high. You can't imagine such a tree, but Lord Shiva sitting under it. Now, another way to resolve this difficulty, it's a problem for us who are on the platform of limited perception. Another way to solve this problem of the Bhagavatam descriptions not being in line with perceived reality. It's not again I'm saying it's not the descriptions of the universe, it's not our perceived reality. We accept the perceived reality of astronomers, what they perceive, and they themselves have very different opinions. Now, another way to resolve this problem is to say that the Bhagavatam, when it's describing Krishna's Leela, then it's fully spiritual, fully correct. And when it's describing, when it gives descriptions of the universe, we don't necessarily have to accept it as correct. This is another way of approaching this problem, to say that the descriptions of the material world, they may be incorrect, but the descriptions of spiritual existence, we can accept them as correct. Now this approach can also be extended to say that the descriptions of Shastra, when they describe, for instance, the 4 orders of life, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and describes the different roles they play, that may pertain to a society of the past, but not to the present society, therefore we can discard them. This can also, there are many, then you can take it anyway, that anything in Shastra, if it doesn't fit modern society, just discard it. Now practically this is going on to some extent, just like for instance, it's said that you can't perform puja in a contaminated place. One instance of a contaminated place, if it's close to a place where a stool is passed, or if the building is contiguous with a place where a stool is passed, the whole building becomes polluted. Now, in the modern age, we're building temples with attached bathrooms. That means that the whole building that you're worshipping the deities within the same building you're passing stool in. According to Shastra, this is not correct, it shouldn't be done. But some allowance or adjustment is made for the modern age. Some adjustment is done. So we may say that just like in Shastra it's said, that you should when you go to answer the calls of nature, you should go at least 1 bow shot away from any residence. And there are many different rules. You shouldn't pass in an agricultural field, not on the bank of a river or in water, not facing the sun, not facing a brahmana, not facing a cow. There are so many different rules. So we may say, well, these rules don't apply in the modern age, so we can extend that so many things in Shastra, they don't apply, or they don't have to be taken as real. Of course, this can be very dangerous, because where do you draw the line? Where can you, just like here you see, in Bhagavatam, there's descriptions of Krishna's Leela. Now if you want to accept Krishna's Leela as factual, you have to accept many things which don't appear to be possible within the laws of physics, such as Krishna's going beyond the coverings of the universe to see Mahavishnu. Now if you accept that Krishna's Leela is very nice, but the descriptions of the Bhagavatam about the universe, we don't accept them, then you're going to have a problem, because you find that the descriptions in the Bhagavatam are those of the universe within which Krishna traveled. Krishna went through the coverings of the universe. So if you say that the description of the universe with its 7 coverings is incorrect, but Krishna's Leela, oh that's correct, that's very nice, then you have a problem, because Krishna went through the coverings of the universe which you say don't exist, or they're just some kind of primitive idea which is no longer to be accepted. So, Srila Prabhupada's stance was to accept the Shastra, not Srila Prabhupada, all the Acharyas, they accept Shastra to be gospel truth. That saying is there in English, gospel truth. This saying comes from the acceptance that what is in the gospel is to be accepted as true. You can accept it 100% to be true because it's in the Bible. Or in our case, as followers of the Vedic scriptures, we accept it as true because it's in the Shastra. Now there may be some problems there with apparent contradictions. There in Shastra, there may be problems with Patantaram or Pataved, just like here we have in this verse, Sutasya. But another meaning is Satasya. Of course, both come to this, they mean the same thing. Another problem is that the descriptions of Shastra, they don't appear to fit with our understanding of reality. Now, those who are followers of Shastra, they accept Shastra as gospel truth. And instead of thinking, when the description of Shastra doesn't appear to fit our vision of reality or our perception of reality, then the understanding is that either our perception is incorrect or our understanding is incorrect. We don't say that Vyasa is incorrect. Because once you say that, then the whole Shastra, then it becomes meaningless. Then the Shastra loses its value altogether. What is the value of Shastra if you reject? Or if you say this piece is good, that piece is not good, then it becomes very dangerous. Then it becomes arbitrarily, you take what you like and reject what you don't like, and that kind of thing has gone on, just like with Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Arya Samaj. He accepted, we accept the Vedas, we don't accept anything else. We don't accept the Puranas, we don't accept Mahabharata. So they've selectively taken some parts. Even though the subject matter of the Puranas and the Itihasas, it's the same subject as those of the Vedas, and in fact, Purana means that which makes Purana, that makes complete the Vedas. The Vedic knowledges cannot be completely or properly understood without the Puranas. And Srimad Bhagavatam is accepted as a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. The Vedanta Sutra is a summary of, it's the explanation of Vedanta, which Vedanta means Upanishads. Upanishads are part of the Vedas. So you can't separate the two things. You get into all kinds of problems if you do that. So the Vedic process is to accept the Shastra and understand it through the Parampara system. Now in the modern age, not everybody is going to accept that, especially in the modern age, in which the education is mostly by the supposedly empiric method. People want to have it demonstrated to them. So Prabhupada, he was, like I say, he founded this BI, Bhaktivedanta Institute, with the idea of demonstrating through the medium of modern science that the Shastric descriptions are correct. And that if the descriptions of modern science don't tally with those of Shastra, then they're incorrect. Either incorrect or incomplete. So that is a great job, which is very much in its beginning stages. And frankly, we haven't advanced very much in this field. If you consider how scientific or the so-called progress of modern science is done. It's done, billions of dollars are spent on research. Hundreds of brains are put to work on different problems. So in our society, we have basically working on this, and that also not full-time. We have Sadar Puja Prabhu with a small budget. Of course, we have one great advantage also. We have Krishna on our side, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that helps a lot. And Sadar Puja Prabhu has been instrumental in, at least in one area of modern science that Prabhupada was very much preached against, the Darwinian evolutionary theory. Sadar Puja Prabhu with Juta Karma Prabhu, basically with a small budget and not much assistance, they have given one very big kick in the face to evolutionary theory with their book Forbidden Archaeology, which continues to create tremendous, it's upset the scientific community, tremendously upset them, and is continuing to do so. So in that area at least, some progress has been made. Now, in the area of astronomy, there doesn't appear to be much progress made, and of course it's a cumulative process. But our movement doesn't have anything, just like we have something very solid to present the evolutionists, this book, Forbidden Archaeology. It's well documented, it's scientifically presented, they can't avoid the evidence which is presented. It's a solid kick in the face for the evolutionists. We don't have anything to present to the astronomers. Not in that same way. Of course, Sadar Puja Prabhu wrote a book called Vedic Astronomy and Cosmography, or something like this. But basically it's his theories, but it's not something you can present to a hardcore astronomer, and it's not going to make him have sleepless nights like the Forbidden Archaeology is for the evolutionists. So we don't have anything at this stage to present to the astronomers. Now, just recently, it's coming up that some of our devotees are coming up with this theory that, well, we can accept the Shastra as much as Krishna's Leela, this is all very nice, we accept that, but as far as descriptions of the universe, we shouldn't accept that. It's coming up, it's the latest vast speculation. VAST is an acronym for Vaishnav Advanced Studies. It's the name of one conference in which our highly intelligent devotees in our movement get together and dream up incredible theories, such as Vyasadeva didn't know what he was talking about. When he was writing about Krishna Leela, that was very nice, but because Vyasadeva, he wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam in his maturity after writing so many other books. So what he was writing was very nice, but he was a little senile. So from time to time he just wrote these funny things about different planets and all. It doesn't make any sense. I guess that could be said also. If you say that Vyasa he made so many mistakes. Of course, why he would write systems of the universe if they don't exist? There's many questions. It's an easy way out. It's an easy way to avoid the scrutiny of the mundane scholars by agreeing with them that the Bhagavatam is not fully correct and there are different concoctions in it. Now, devotees who take such a stance can also cite Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who said pretty much the same thing at one point in time. Especially in his Krishna Samhita, that was recently translated. I don't know if you read that. in which he summarizes the history of the Bhagavatam, and for instance, he'll put the reign of the Manus, he puts that into 50 years. He said according to Adhunikvad, the modern theory, we can say that this is all like this, and the descriptions in Bhagavatam are not to be taken literally. It's quite a mind-boggler if you read what Bhaktivinoda has written. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he wrote later, because it's very difficult to understand, how can our Vaishnava Acharya write that the Bhagavatam is not correct? Then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur later wrote in the Harmonist an article called Thakur Bhaktivinoda, in which he explains that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was writing like this just to satisfy the empiricists of the time. At that time, as Thakur Bhaktivinoda himself in his lecture he gave in Dinajpur on the Bhagavatam, the famous lecture, he admitted that in his youth he liked to read the books of different Western philosophers, and they thought that the Bhagavatam, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. They rejected it because the Christians at that time, preaching in India, they were rejecting Krishna. Krishna is even if you take Hinduism as a polytheistic religion, which it is, if you take Hinduism in the broad sense, then still Krishna is probably the most, among all the gods, as they say, Krishna is the most prominent if you take the whole of India and the whole of Hinduism, especially because there's the Bhagavad Gita, and they're all of Krishna's pastimes, and Krishna's pastimes in particular have formed the basis of Indian cultural life in terms of dance, song, poetry. India's folk culture is more based on Krishna than any other personage in the Hindu Tig Tree 33 million demigods, if you want to count Krishna as one of them. Now the Christians were saying, what kind of religion is this? You see, Krishna in his childhood, he flirted with other people's wives. And in his later life, he told all kinds of lies and cheated to get other people killed. He was always killing people. He killed his uncle. What kind of God do you believe in? It's all rubbish. So the Bhagavatam, and particularly Krishna, was rejected among the English-educated elite, which was a very small number at that time, and in India, concentrated in Bengal. There were more English-educated intellectuals in Bengal. The number of English-speaking people in India at that time was very small percentage. So they were brought up with Western education. And particularly in Bengal, the Vaishnava cult had become very much degraded. As Vivekananda said, that Vaishnavism is a sex religion. It was taken like that because there were so many perversions. In the name of Krishna's pastimes, the Sahajias would say that, well, we have these feelings, just like Krishna had feelings. So Krishna was feeling for the gopis. So I'm a man and I'm feeling like Krishna, and these are all the women and they're feeling like the gopis, and therefore we should enjoy. This is how they took. We should enjoy as Krishna and the gopis enjoy. So Vaishnavism in Bengal had its public image, and the way it was practiced was to a large extent one of debauchery in the name of religion. So actually the people in general, especially the educated people, those who were brought up from their childhood with the Western way of thinking, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote, we hated the Bhagavatam. They hated the idea of the Bhagavatam. They were very much against it. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur described that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote these things in such a way just to capture the attention of these people that they could begin to understand the message of the Bhagavatam. Because they wouldn't accept the chronology of the Bhagavatam or so many things presented in it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, for their benefit, said that, well, yes, all these things can be accepted with a little adjustment, and he adjusted the reign of the Manus to be 50 years and squashed the whole of the Bhagavatam chronology, which goes over millions of years, into 5,000 years. And he did this just, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur described that he did this just to awaken people's faith in the Bhagavatam so that he could begin to tell them the message of the Bhagavatam. But it may be taken another way also, that those who are addicted to the process of mental speculation and don't accept the transcendent nature of the Bhagavatam, that it's knowledge coming from a higher source, they always want to see things through their empiric vision. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he did, especially Krishna Samhita, was written for the benefit of such people. However, it's understood that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he didn't accept the ascending method to understand the absolute truth, because being a traditionalist, ultimately he's a traditionalist in following the parampara. He knew that you have to accept a guru, you have to hear Shastra explained by a guru, even though he was writing in Krishna Samhita that you have to apply your mental processes, and he never anywhere wrote that you should hear the Bhagavatam from a guru. But in his practical life, and throughout all the rest of his writings, he always gave the traditional accepted system that Shastra has to be understood through Guru and through Guru Parampara, not by your own guesswork, not by your own logical processes. So in Krishna Samhita especially, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was presenting that if you apply your mental processes, and of course he was acting as a guru to guide them, you can see this, it's not necessarily incorrect, and therefore you should come to the message of Bhagavatam, which that Krishna actually, he's not immoral, and he's the greatest spiritual personality in existence. So this Bhaktivinoda Thakur was trying to do. Now if without hearing from, if you just want to take Bhaktivinoda Thakur as he is, without seeing the acharyas following him, namely Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and just take his method as in which he's mentioned not even in all his writings, then you could possibly come up with such theories as, yes, the Bhagavatam is incorrect in places, which he himself wrote. But that, as Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has pointed out, is not the ultimate conclusion of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. The ultimate conclusion must be the same as the conclusion of all the acharyas, which is Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Chitte Te Kare Oika Ana Kare Hamanayasha. Taking the words of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, one has to fix them up in one's heart, knowing them to be the absolutely correct, and not going outside the scope of them. So this is a very big discussion, which I just begun to touch on. This is the subject of a big study, which hopefully I may get into at some point in time. I was thinking that controversial issues in parampara history, that we should write some book discussing all these things. One of our godbrothers, I've just been reading his book, one of our Shukavad Prabhu has been studying Bhaktivinoda Thakur for many years, recently brought out a book discussing Bhaktivinoda Thakur's presentation of Adhunikvad, a modern way of understanding Shastra. Of course, the very use of the word Adhunik, modern, suggests that Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't want this or didn't consider this to be the ultimate system of understanding. Because Adhunik means already it's limited by time. It's not an eternal principle. Anyway, this is a very big discussion. Understanding how to understand Shastra. The first thing, if we're going to understand, if we're going to approach spiritual knowledge in a systematic way, the first thing is epistemology. Pramanavad, it's called in Sanskrit. Pramanavad, understanding of what are evidences. So how to understand the parampara system is through Guru, Sadhu and Shastra.